Hello, this is Andrew Price here from BlenderGuru.com, and in this video tutorial I'm going to be showing you how to create this scene that you can see right here. So we're going to be essentially making a ruined looking environment. So something that has been worn down, to any extreme you want. You can use these sort of techniques for a scene which just looks a little bit old, or you can go like full balls to the wall like I have done here, like apocalyptic, end of the world. Everything's just torn down. It's everything's a wreck, and that's essentially what we're going to be making here. Now we're not going to be making the entire scene from scratch because that would take far too long. So what we're going to be doing is actually taking this image that you can see right here. So starting out with a basic sort of empty, clean looking warehouse, and then we're going to be I'm going to be showing you how to add in the elements which will make it look dirty and worn down. So we're going to be doing things like breaking these structural beams and stuff like here, adding some grunge to the walls, graffiti, which is always evident in end of the world situations, I imagine. I don't know, I'm guessing. And then some vines as well. So not vines, ivies, how we want to call it, the stuff that crawls up the walls and makes it all look run down. And then as well as that, we're going to be doing some plants and like debris on the ground. I will be using some elements from the Nature Academy, like just to put some plants around and some grass and stuff like that. So if you don't have that, that's fine. You can go ahead and make your own grass and things like that. But I'm just going to show you like the basics of that. So if you guys don't mind about that. And what else are we going to do? A little tiny bit of compositing towards the end, but you get the picture. So this is what we're going to be starting with, and I suppose I should show you, this is what the finished scene looks like. So you can see it's pretty packed. By the way, in case you couldn't see, this little character right here is, of course, none other than Depressed Sintel. Very sad. And, a little bit of nostalgia. There's one of the lamps from one of my previous tutorials as well. So I've decided to use a whole bunch of different things there because I'm lazy. So let's go ahead and get started. So first thing I should tell you, I guess, little bit of background. When you're approaching a scene which you're going to be wrecking, making it look ruined or dirty or however else, you need to really put some serious thought into the story behind the building or the situation, the scenario, or something like that. Because if you just take I'm gonna get this house and I want it to look a little bit dirty, and you just start putting in getting some textures off the internet, putting in some grunge here, and maybe I might put some plants here, or maybe some broken glass on the ground. If you just sort of just do it like half-heartedly and just I'll just do and take some elements that you've seen offline like other people have done, it's gonna look fake. It's gonna look really fake. It's not gonna look realistic, and that's really because you haven't put any thought into the story, so it doesn't look believable. So what I mean by story is you need to be thinking about what the building is used for. So in this scenario, it is a warehouse. So I sort of put some thought into what could have happened to this building, which has then caused it to become ruined and things like that. So the basic premise for this is that, of course, that human beings have deserted it, and so nature has just completely taken over. There's grass and stuff all over the ground. Some of the roof tiles up the top have fallen through, which is now allowed sunlight to come through, so all the plants are able to grow. Then somebody's sort of like set up a little base camp inside, and they're now living there as sort of like the last human being on Earth, or something like that. So a whole bunch of little things like that. So just try to think about the story, bits of graffiti, stuff like that. So the story will really help to sell your scene. So very important you think about that, and it's also going to free it up for you. It's going to take away that whole element of what am I going to do, and it's just really going to clear it up for you, and just you'll come up with a lot better ideas if you start thinking about that. Okay. Anyway, I think we can. I think that's enough of that. So we can go ahead and get started. So go ahead and download this starter file if you haven't got it already. And the first thing we're going to do is to start breaking stuff. So very easy here. I'm going to grab some of these structural beams I've got here at the end, and I'm just going to start breaking it. So I'm just going to move this one down here. Maybe one like that. And I've got it set up on like an array system. I assume you guys all know about arrays and things like that. So you can sort of do some stuff like that, make it look a little bit broken. These ones here, I'm gonna just move the count for that down to there, let's say. Going into side view, and I'm just gonna, bring that down, as you can see right there. And oh, you can see, so I've got these ones like on the side, which you can't, this side, which you can't really see, so you don't really need to worry about that. And this one, I'll make that one fall down a little bit there as well. And I might just bring that back. I'm gonna duplicate that. I'm gonna put one of these on the ground to make it look like it's sort of like fallen off or something like that. And I'll just sort of like leave it like there or something. So it's kind of like fallen. And as well as that, I'm also going to put some like sort of like in front of the camera. See, that looks kind of fake. I'm just gonna just bring that up a little bit, something like that. Okay, so just making it look like things have just gone ape over time, and just stuff started to break, and it's been worn down. There's a whole bunch of like reference photos that you can find online. If you go to Flickr or just like Google Images and you type in like abandoned warehouse, there's like a whole bunch of like hobby artists that go about just like going into random buildings and just taking photos of stuff. And so there's oodles and oodles. I think they have a name, like the kind of people that like to do that. I don't know enough about that little cult or group, hobbyist, whatever you want to call it. I don't really know enough about it to kind of speak on it, but I have sort of come across them online, and they take some really cool photos, so definitely take advantage of that. I'm not going to show any of those reference photos here because, I mean, you can never be too careful with copyrights, and it's just, yeah. You want to keep, I want to keep the website running, and I don't want to get like approached by somebody saying, hey, you used my random image. Anyway, okay, so what I'm doing here, I'm just sort of like creating like kind of structural support like right in front of the camera, and that's also like sort of a compositional element. So this is sort of acting as a natural frame. So if I take my camera right here and I give it a depth of field, so I give it something to focus on. So let's say this little lamp right there, you can see the name there in the bottom left hand corner is lamp. So if I select my camera, and then I'll set the focal point to be lamp. And then I can now change the aperture type to be f-stop. F-stop is for, you can use either or. You can use radius or f-stop. I use f-stop because I use a camera myself, so I'm sort of familiar with how it works. But basically, the lower the number, then the more out of focus it will be. Something like 2.2 or 2.1 or something like that, or even like 1. I think 1.4 is actually what I used. And that'll give you really nice, like thick focus effect. So this whole part, this foreground here will be quite blurry. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and save this because, yeah, you know why. It can crash. So just give it a run. I'm just going to quickly check to make sure that it is out of focus. There you go. So you can see those structural elements are out of focus there. So that's kind of cool. So what else can we do? Okay, so we've got this table here. Let's go ahead and overturn that quite easily. I just double tapped R then, the rotate key. Actually, I should turn on the that key press thing, which is something that people like to watch. Screencast keys. There we go. Normally I do this before I start the recording, but today I didn't. So, okay, there you go. Now you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, you've got like all the buttons that I'm pressing. So that should be helpful. Okay, so I just double tapped the R key, so I just like rotated that really quickly. Maybe like that, and a little bit like maybe on its side or something like that. Spending far too long on this little table, I tell you what. I'm trying to speed this up, So it's interesting for you guys, but it's hard. It is really hard. Okay, so what am I doing? Okay, so we're just breaking stuff, just trying to think of things to break. But I think that's pretty good. So onto this roof here. The roof, currently it's bare, it's completely bare, but you can imagine that when the building was built, that there was roof tiles all across everything that was there. So I found a reference photo online of like an abandoned warehouse, and I noticed that half the roof had fallen in, like the little tiles had like fallen through onto the ground, and so now there was like all this light shining into the abandoned warehouse, and it looked really, really cool. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm just going to snap my cursor to that beam right there, and I'm just going to go ahead and add in a plane. Now these, I should say these little tiles that we're creating right here, this is more for, it's almost purely for shadows. It's not really going to be in the render at all, so you don't need to add any detail to it. That's just going to increase your render times. So once I've got one tile there, I'm just going to start moving it about, rotating it everywhere, like so. And it's a matter of, I mean, you're probably going to need to experiment, like, you know, once you've finished, you know, displacing these, sort of like throwing them about, give it like a render. And if you want more light, then obviously delete some of the tiles. If there's too much light, then you need to add in a few more. It's essentially just trying to get some nice shadows that sort of like come into the scene. Also make sure that the towards the edges, like so on the right hand side where that wall is over there, make sure you've got some tiles against there as well. Otherwise, like that entire wall there will then have like, you know, light sort of seeping down into it. But if you have the tiles like right there, then you can get some really cool shadows against the wall, which is where it's most noticeable. So it's just a matter of continuing this. So you can grab like a whole bunch of them and like duplicate. Probably shouldn't rotate it like that, but you know, duplicate again and again and again. And we're just doing this until you have something that you are happy with. Okay. Bit more over there. I spent a little bit more time and care when I was creating my final scene. You know, it's one of those things like when you're creating a tutorial, you have to sort of keep it on a scale, like a balance. Like if I wanted the scene to look perfect and like recreate it exactly as it is for you guys, then the tutorial would be like 5 hours long. But if I want to keep it, you know, somewhat entertaining or like realistic, then I have to cut some things out and do things quickly. So some people say like, oh, why doesn't the scene, you know, look the same as when, you know, in the final image? And that's mainly just so that I can keep a nice balance for you guys and keep it short. Because I don't know about you guys, but I really hate tutorials that are like 2 or 3 hours long, and yeah, you know, it can just be cumbersome. So I like to keep it short and snappy. So that's what I try to do for my tutorial videos. So you can see now you have a lot nicer looking shadows coming into it. It's kind of like a row effect there. So you could kind of break that up a little bit if you wanted to. And if you want to know like whereabouts on the roof that shadow is casting from, if you just have a look at where the lamp is sort of coming down with the sun, like that, and you sort of like line your view up with the sun, then you can just sort of go, oh, okay, so it's probably this part right here, or like this area here, like one there, you know, stuff like that. So you can sort of get an idea for how all that works, and that looks pretty good, I think. So the next part, let's go ahead and start adding in some grunge textures. Okay, so going back to what I said at the start about coming up with a story for your scene, that also applies to the textures, because it's not enough to just go online and just grab any old sort of grungy looking texture and then just apply it to the scene. You first of all need to figure out or sort of come up with a reason for why that particular grunge texture would be there. So if you head over to CG Textures right here, let's say you go to the grunge category, click on grunge maps or something like that, you can see there's a whole bunch of different ones here. And they're not all going to be suitable for it because, you know, stuff like this, if you just threw that on the wall, I mean, it might look better than nothing, but it's going to look fake because, you know, why would this, you know, patchy, greeny looking mold sort of stuff be grown on the wall? It doesn't really make all that much sense. So so when having a look at this scene, you know, I would sort of imagine, you know, this is a warehouse, and you can see that the roof has, you know, the tiles have sort of fallen in. So the rain would be coming into the warehouse now as well. So that means that you'd probably get some leaking sort of like streak effect from, you know, some of the rusted metal and things like that would be sort of coming down the wall. Also with the ivy sort of like growing up the walls and things like that, which we're going to be adding later. That would also be, you know, having like a green sort of moss or like a grungy sort of like leaking sort of look to it. So that's sort of an idea of sort of like, you know, when you're looking for a grunge texture, you need to be sort of, you know, thinking about things like that. So that's what we're after. We're after, in this instance, a leaky sort of texture. Now, in this instance, you can find it underneath the decals right here. And then if you click on leaking, and then click on leaking again, then you find all these really nice textures here. And most of these would actually be pretty good for what we want. You don't have to use a texture that has an alpha mask to it, but I found that it works really quite well in this instance, because if you just use a normal texture with like a multiply value to it, so it takes the dark values and puts it over the top of the others, I mean, it'll look cool and it'll look good, but you won't get the full 100% value of that texture showing through, because you'll only get the darkness to it, not any of the lightness. So that's why using a texture with an alpha mask can be beneficial. So in this instance, I'm going to be using this texture right here, as well as this one right there. So this is what they look like in full, that one and that one. And I'm going to be applying both of those over the top of the brick wall texture. So I should say that all of this whole building is pretty much already UV unwrapped, because it's already got the brick wall map texture applied to it. So if we just go to the UV image editor right here, just click on that. This is what it's UV unwrapped as. I mean, it's not anything really. It doesn't really tell you anything about it. But, I mean, okay, so you've got 4 walls, okay? 4 walls right there, and then you've got this sort of little alcove, little building place there. And that's probably to the extent of the UV unwrapping. It's pretty basic stuff. It's, yeah, I don't think you need a tutorial on that. Anyway, so to apply the grunge map to it, all I need to do is go over to the node editor right here. And you can see this is the current material. All you've got is a simple brick map texture, which has then been fed through a diffuse and a glossy shader combined together. I shouldn't be there. Combined together to create the final brick wall. So in order to apply the grunge map to that, what we need to do is to apply a texture in between where the brick map meets with the diffuse shader right there. So we need to add in our grunge maps in this area right here. So what I'm going to do is first of all add in an image texture node, and I'm going to load in one of those textures. So in this instance, let's go ahead and grab this one, which is 196, and that is that dark, where is it? This one. We're going to load in that texture. So it shows up red sometimes. You know, I'm not entirely sure why that is. It's kind of annoying, but anyway, that's fine. And in order to combine the two, what I need to do is add in a mix color node, right, like that. And I'll just move that up to there to connect it to this one right here. And then I'm going to take the output of that and apply it into the bottom input, and then take the output of the alpha value from our grunge texture. Because it has that alpha background there, it allows us to use that. So we're putting that in there, and then that will now have effectively applied it. So if we want to have a look at how that looks now, let's move that, move that to a separate layer, as you can see I've already done. And let's take a look at how that looks with that texture applied to it. And there you go, it looks fine. So this is what it looks like before. That's just the brick texture by itself. And this is what it looks like with. Ta-da! So it's pretty simple. Okay, so now let's add the next one to that as well. So we've got that dark sort of soot looking texture, but I want there to be some, you know, nature sort of look to it, because there's going to be ivies growing up it as well. So I'm adding in this sort of green grunge effect, doing the exact same thing here. Drop that in there, and that's that. That's pretty simple. Now you can see it looks quite good. Now if I add in the wall from the rest of the scene, you can see that image, that texture is now applied really quite nicely over everything else as well. And really, if you, the only thing you really need to be worried about with the UV unwrapping is just to make sure that that edge, whoops, there you go. Let's just add that in. That top edge, which is, if we just turn on sync like that, is that top edge right there, the top of the wall. As long as it aligns with the top of, you know, where the texture is like that, so that it's running downwards like that. If you have it like starting like there, then the texture is going to look really weird. But provided it's at the top, then it should be fine. There shouldn't be any worries. So that's what I did with this house, this little, I don't know, alcove, whatever you want to call that. I just made sure that was lined at the top, and then it looks fine. So that's pretty much that. Okay, now let's take a look. Let's go back to where we were. All right, and I'll just go to the rendered view mode. Take a look at that. Okay, so if I wanted this texture to now apply the specularity, then that would look a lot more realistic, because it looks cool as it is. But if you wanted it to have sort of like a more dynamic look, like make it look like it's fully integrated into the scene, then you can go ahead and do something else, which looks really cool. If you go to the node editor, if I take the output from, let's say, this image texture right here, actually no, take the output of the alpha from that image texture, and then let's say I put that into this mix shader over here. So this mix shader is applying the diffuse shader and the glossy shader, and it's combining the two together. So if there's nothing in that factor input right like there, like the actual mask for what it uses, if there's nothing in there, then it just uses a default value, or sorry, a value that you define right there. But if you take the output from an alpha image like this one, or any like sort of black and white image, then it's going to, what can I say? It's going to use that alpha as a mask for this glossy shader. So to demonstrate that, let's take a look now at how that looks. Okay, let's bring in this one. Okay, so this part here that looks really white, that's actually because it's 100% glossy right now. So it's too glossy, but at least it is using that image texture for its glossy shader, so that's fine. But what I want to do is add in a mix node right here. And I'm going to make this bottom input black, and then turn that up. Let's go let's go 0.95 or something like that. So now it will only use, it will only apply a glossy effect wherever that particular image texture is showing through. It's not just going to apply a glossy effect to everything. So that's going to give it a more, you know, as I said, sort of dynamic look to it, and it will look a lot cooler. You could also, if you wanted to, make it apply to the bump map as well, which is another sort of effect if you wanted to go for that. Which if you zoom right in, you can see that now that moss has a kind of a bump map effect. But I actually want it to apply more to the bricks themselves instead. So I'm just going to remove that and just make it use the bricks instead. But anyway, I think that's enough for the grunge mapping. I think that's fine. Let's just bring back the rest of the scene here. Yep, and let's go ahead and give that a render, and we'll see how that looks. Okay, there we go. So you can see already the scene's looking a lot nicer. It looks a lot dirtier, thanks to that grunge texture. The little broken parts of the scene is looking kind of cool. What we're going to do now is add in some graffiti to the warehouse, which is kind of a cool effect. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so there's two ways that you can create graffiti in Blender. Now you can do it one of the ways which I guess is easier really, but it is kind of limited, and that's where you create your own texture, then you enable texture painting, and then you can like paint directly onto the object. But that has a number of like limitations to it, in that you can't use like an alpha mask for it, so you can't get the full color from the paints that you use to paint onto it. But another method which I like, and it gives you a lot more control over it because you can change like the brush tip and stuff like that, that's to simply use a separate image editor like Photoshop or GIMP. Paint into a separate file, and then you can use that as a normal texture over the top of our brick walls right here. So that's the method that I'm going to be showing you right here. So what I'm going to do is, with our little alcove building here selected, I'm going to go into edit mode right here. And you can see that it's already lined up perfectly for our grunge texture and our brick wall and stuff like that. It's already, as it should be. So I don't want to mess that up by, moving stuff around so that it fits, my graffiti. Because if you make it so that it fits, perfect for the graffiti use, then it's going to be a little bit, it's going to go sort of out of whack when it tries to use it for the grunge as well. Yeah. Anyway, it gets mixed up. Anybody that's had any experience with different texturing in Blender will know what I'm talking about. But in order to get around this, you need to create a separate UV map. So over here, underneath the object data panel, I memorized that name. You've got UV map. So I'm just clicking plus there, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to call this UV map graffiti. And what that means is I can now go ahead and move this around. I can position it however I like. And it'll be fine. So if I just go like this, UV map, and then now I can switch back to, I've still got the same UV map that I had before, but I've also got the graffiti one right there. So that is the whole point of having two UV maps. You don't mess up one, you can have one and keep another, whatever, you get the point. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go down to UVs and then click on Export UV Layout. And I'm going to go ahead and save this. You can see I've had numerous attempts at creating different amounts of graffiti. Various fails, I should say, really. And then go ahead and load that up into your favorite image editor. I'm using Photoshop because I like Photoshop, but you're welcome to use GIMP if you like. And once you've loaded it up, you should see something like this, which is the basic UV layout of our mesh. So the good thing about saving it as a PNG is that you can see in the image layers over here, I can easily disable that UV layout, which is really good. So I'm just enabling a new layer. And what I want to do is essentially just draw whatever I want here, and that's going to be my graffiti, which is going to appear on the brick wall. So you can be like more or less, as creative as you want, really. I'm just sort of have to rearrange my desk a little bit here. I'm just bringing in my graphics tablet, which allows me to draw with my hand. So if I just let's just start drawing here. Andrew was ear. Something like that, and then you can I guess you can change the color, so that's sort of like a dark red, and then I'm gonna do like a blue one here, maybe I can go like a red, like a bright red or something, and I can go like the end is near, something like that, that would be quite expected in a apocalyptic kind of scenario. Actually, kind of funny story. When I was younger, when I was in high school, I wanted to be cool. I wanted to fit in school, and I always thought man, the coolest people in the world are gangsters, and they they go out and they graffiti stuff. That's like what I imagined when I was in high school. I was like, they go out and they graffiti stuff, and they're so cool. And I thought, man, I want to be cool like them. So I remember I went online and I wanted to find out how to be a graffiti artist. So I took this was years and years ago, on how to graffiti stuff, and I learned all the tagging methods for stuff. So I came up with my own tag. And I'll just draw it for you right now from what I can remember. It was pyro. And then I did a whook. And then something like this. And it was this terrible tag. I came up with the name Pyro. I don't know why I went with Pyro. It's absolutely horrible. And then I remember I went to school once and I had a pencil. And I drew it on a wall at lunchtime. I just got a pencil. I just drew Pyro on the wall. And it was I don't know what I expected to happen, some shining light would just oh, and I was cool, nothing happened. I just drew it on the wall, and I was like, well, that was kind of weird. That was kind of a waste of time, really. And that really sums up my whole high school period, trying to fit in and failing every single time. That was just, it was my job. I had to fail hard, or else, it's just, otherwise it just wasn't me, Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is this is how you create sort of graffiti. I'm doing sort of what looks like a paint sort of dripping effect. So you can do that if you want, or you can forego all that, and you don't have to. But anyway, you sort of I don't have time to do it all now, but you can just sort of add in detail to make it look as though there was thick paint that was used, and it's sort of dripping. And there's a few filters and stuff you can use in Photoshop, which I think does a similar effect. But I think it can kind of look fake if you just use the filters. But this method I think works pretty well. So that's something like that. That's just roughly how you go about doing that. Anyway, once you're happy with your graffiti, in this instance you wouldn't be happy with this, okay? I just want to make that known. This is not good. This is terrible. You should spend a lot more time researching graffiti and figuring out how to do it well. You shouldn't just hack away at it like I have just done. This is purely for tutorial's sake only. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and now load in that graffiti texture which I've just created, graffiti. Oh, look at that. It looks horrible. That's because you need to go down here on the right-hand side and click on that little button. And there we go. It's now loaded in nice and good. I don't know how to finish that sentence. So just having a look what we did before. Okay, that's the glossy shader. Okay, so we need to, if you want your graffiti to be behind the grunge, then you want to add in your graffiti like in this area here. Or if you want it to be on top of the grunge, make it look like the graffiti was fresh, then it would go here. I'm going to actually just add it right here. I think in my final one I put it like here so that the graffiti was on top, but I think it was too obvious and looked kind of weird. So I'm going to add it in here, and I think that will look a little bit cooler, hopefully. There I am, trying to be cool again, you see? It just doesn't work, ever. I have to move my keyboard and stuff around. Okay, there we go. I got the microphone back to where it should be. Alright, load in that one. So this is the image right here, and I'm going to add in a mix node. Drop that in there, and take the alpha from that and then put that in there. So that's the good thing about creating it, using Photoshop, because you have an alpha mask as opposed to using Blender, which would, you'd have to mix and match, and I could never get it to work properly. So I'm just, that's how I've done it, and it works well. So now let's have a look. Let's see if it actually worked. So I'll go into rendered view mode, and no, it didn't work. Look at that. It was a complete and utter failure. That was really bad. Okay, well, let's investigate and see why it failed. All right, nothing there. Graffiti, yes, PNG. Oh, okay, so we probably need to give it the proper... Oh, bam. Okay, so this part here where it says texture coordinates, if you just set it as UV, it will use the default UV map, whatever is here, which of these is selected, like that. But if none of these are selected, then it went completely blank, as you saw before. But anyway, in order to set this so that it uses this UV map as opposed to this one, the top one, then what you need to do is add in an attribute node, and then type in the name of your UV map, which in this case is graffiti, and then go ahead and drag that across, like so. And there you go. You can see you now have that, exactly as it should be. I think this is a bug in Blender. That's the only explanation I have for it. But you can see it's kind of like repeating the texture, and I'm fairly certain that's because it's using this, like if that was there. You can see like that's where that is appearing right there. But for some reason it's using that, both of these image textures basically, and using it to apply to this, which should not happen. That's not right. It shouldn't be doing that. I'm fairly certain that's just a bug in Blender. I'm probably going to report it after I finish this tutorial because it's kind of annoying. But anyway, don't worry about that. That's fine. It just looks like more scribble over the top of other scribbles, so it's not too bad. But you can see that the graffiti has applied well, so that's really cool. Now, in order to go back to the rest of our scene here. Okay, so in order for these four walls, so these four walls here, they share the exact same image name as our little alcove building right here. So they all use this same brick wall material. However, the brick wall, this little alcove here, it's now using the graffiti UV map. However, our four walls here, they don't have that graffiti UV map because we only applied it to this alcove. Now, the good thing is that actually we don't really need a separate UV map for our our four walls. In fact, actually, if I just go ahead and try this out, let's just have a look. You can see like the graffiti is already applied to the rest of the wall because of that bug that's in Blender. But anyway, let's just say that the bug wasn't there. What you would have to do in order to make it the graffiti to appear is you essentially just need to create another UV map for these brick walls here, like this, and call it graffiti. Okay. And oh, this one's got one called grunge. That's not right. Graffiti. And if you wanted to, you could go to the UV image editor and experiment with that a little bit, like stretch it or move it around if you wanted to. But I think it should actually work pretty well, like straight off the bat. So let's just take a look at how that looks when it's rendered. And it's pretty good. I mean, let's just zoom in on those walls over there. I mean, it could always be better. You might want to fix up like the stretching and the repeating stuff or whatever. But it's not too bad. It's essentially using those three little scribbles there, and it's just produced it all across those walls there. Again, the more effort you put into this, if you wanted to create like separate graffiti maps for each wall, that would obviously be better, but we're saving time here by reusing that same graffiti over everything else, and it's not that noticeable in the final thing, so it's fine, and that's what we're gonna go with. Okay, so for the next step, what we're going to be doing is creating the debris over the ground to create, more mayhem in the scene. So what we want is various pieces of like broken wood, little bits of metal and stuff like that, distributed across the floor here. Now, if you were to like create each separate object and like, put them down one by one, duplicate, etc., etc., that would take far too long. And so there is a better method, and that is to use a particle system, and that's what I'm going to be showing you right now. Basically, you create an assortment of say 10 objects, and then the particle system will randomly distribute it all across the plane for you and do essentially all your work for you. So it's great for lazy people like me and like you. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to move to a new layer right now, and we're going to start modeling some stuff. So it's always good to model off a reference image, and in this instance I actually have a reference image from CG Textures, so it means that I can actually show it in the video without getting sued by someone. So it's this texture right here. It's Scrap Yard 100M for those of you playing at home, and it just looks like this. So that just gives you an idea of like some stuff that you can create, and it should look pretty realistic. So the first thing I'm going to do is just create some pieces of wood, and that's really easy. You just create a cube, and then you scale that along the S and the Z axes, like so. And that's a piece of wood. That is a piece of wood right there, ladies and gentlemen. And I can give it an image. I can give it a material. Let's call it white wood, and you can make it sort of like splintered or something like that, like sort of scale it inwards. And then you want to create some different variations of that, obviously, because you're a good artist, not a lazy one at all. Okay, just move that up. And you want to make sure actually that the that origin point is sitting underneath the entire model. So just sitting there like that, because that's where the ground is going to go. So if you had it like that, then it's going to be underneath the ground. So you want to make sure that it's like that, and then you should be in the clear. Now you can create some bricks as well if you wanted to. Like, let's just, this is just easy. It's just far too easy, Now as like basic and horrible as this looks right now, it'll look really cool when it's combined with the rest of the scene. So it doesn't matter too much. I think for my final one, I actually like UV unwrapped a proper brick, and then I used the proper texture from the wall, and so that it like fit the scene perfectly. But all in all, this will probably be just as good. This little thing like there, and then if you like give it a bevel as well, which is that effect right there, then it's gonna look even better. I mean, well, roughly the same anyway. So it's not. You don't need to worry about it too much. Now let's just create some like little bits of like broken clay, like this piece right here. Ooh, look at the detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a plane. I'm just going to like move that there, and I'm going to subdivide it. Not subdivide it, create a loop cut, I should say, and then move that about, something like that. Let's move that around a little bit like so. Okay, so that's like a little piece of shrapnel, but it's got to be thick as well. So let's add in a solidifier modifier. Let's set the offset to be 1 so that it is above, where it's above that origin point. Sorry, it's hard to talk and then to do, what you're thinking in your brain. So if I'm not careful, I can just come up saying stuff like right now I'm not thinking and my mouth is moving, but it's really annoying to listen to, I'm sure. So I'll stop. Anyway, so I'm gonna call this ceramic, and I'm gonna use this here as well, like that. And then I want this edge here to be kind of like a clay, or not a clay, like a cement texture. That's just gonna make it look even cooler. So let's give it a second texture right here, and let's call this cement, and I'll make it just like a little bit of a gray color like that. Like this is really basic. You can use image textures if you want, and you'll come out, you know, with something that looks even more realistic. But at the scale that these are going to be, it doesn't matter all that much if it's not perfect. You know what I mean? So you can get away with just, you know, image textures. I mean, sorry, just using like plain colors instead of proper image textures, and not many people will notice, if you know what I mean. So yeah, don't panic over it. Don't spend too long on these little things. I find it's always better to put in the important stuff. You know, make sure that the composition is fine. Make sure that the lighting is good. Make sure that you've got, you know, all the stuff that you really need, and then work backwards, and then go back and fill in like extra detail. Because if you start out adding far too much detail like early on into the scene, you'll find that as you go on, you'll get more and more bored, because the rest of the scene needs a lot of work added to it, like a lot. And, you know, if you've spent 2 hours modeling, you know, little bits of debris and nothing else, then the rest of the scene will seem really, really daunting to you, and you won't want to do any of it, basically. So that's why it's important to, you know, be realistic, and, you know, don't spend too long on the little details, at least early on at the start. All right, so let's just try modeling this little like metal piece right here. This should be pretty easy, I think. Just add a plane, and let's like, oh, I don't know, add in 2 loop cuts. Let's cut a hole in that. Let's drag that down. Let's move that down. I have modeled this before, by the way, so I'm like kind of like playing it off like, oh, I'm just doing this right now, like for the first time. But no, I do have extensive experience modeling this little metal ray thing here, so that's why I know it. Oh, number lock. I'm sure I'm not the only one that accidentally hits the number lock key on their keyboard and then forgets about it, or like doesn't notice, and then when they need to use it, they can't use it, and it's really annoying. I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that. Hey, give me a thumbs up in the YouTube thing if you hit the number lock key many times and it annoys you. I think that's how you're supposed to do that anyway. Yeah. Alright, so that's like a crappy little metal rail. Looks crappy to me. And then let's add in a little bevel, a little homemade bevel, like so. And yeah, there we go. Okay, let's give it a bit more holes in it, like so. And then I'm going to duplicate that. I'm going to hit apply, and then I'm going to like bend it out of shape so that it looks like all weird and stuff, like that. Okay, that's pretty cool. And then let's like cut out some chunks of it, like, and then that, and then oh no, you as well. There you go. And then let's like put some kinks in it or something. Make it look like it's been like stepped on. So you can like grab this part, you know, little stuff like that. Again, this is where like if you have a lot of time on your hands, or if you just really love Blender, as I hope a lot of you do. If you're doing this because it's a chore to you, you should probably quit right now. Like quit whilst you're ahead, or you're not even probably ahead, but just quit early on. If you're not enjoying it, quit, because, you know, I'm of the philosophy, or the belief that you should be doing something that you enjoy, that you were meant to do. And if you're finding this boring early on, quit right now. Because I think most of the people that are following this right now are enjoying it, and I hope they're enjoying it. Otherwise, I should quit in that instance. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I think that's enough debris. I think that's fine. You can add more. You can add little cans and little buckets and all sorts of random stuff like that. But you get the picture. It's just stuff. You spend more time modeling it, more time adding detail, and then the final thing is going to look even better. Well, it's going to look better. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, so we're going here. We're clicking on this main floor. I've gone to the particle systems, added a new particle system, and I'm changing the type to be hair, and then I'm clicking on advanced. Now down here underneath the render options, you've got an option to use a group as the actual particles. So you click on group, and we haven't actually made a group out of our objects yet. So let's go ahead and do that right here. These are all of my objects. And I'm going to hit Control G. And then let's go ahead and call this group debris. There we go. Let's go back like this and click on debris. And then click on rotation, like so. And then over underneath where it's got rotation, click on normal. And then you should be able to click on random, as you are right there. But everything's tilted on its side, you'll notice. So this is something that you need to do. You need to grab all of the objects in like front view or something, and then rotate them 90 degrees. And what that will mean is that when you have a look at your particle system, you can now use that random feature there, and it will rotate all of them exactly as they should be, like, you know, so that they're all scattered, exactly as if you'd like thrown them across the scene, and they would be exactly like that. So that's why you rotate them 90 degrees so that it's on the right axis. It's all complicated, it's all weird, but anyway, that's what you need to do. I'm also going to increase the randomized size up to be like 0.7. I find that's pretty good. And you can also change the actual size of the objects as well. And that, you know, will really depend on the size of your scene and how much you want to appear and stuff like that. And then you can also go ahead and turn up the amount of emissions if you want more or less debris. But you get the picture. It's sort of like scattered everywhere and it looks fine. Now, one thing that is very important is that you make sure that all the stuff that is off camera, like all this stuff over here, doesn't have any particles showing on it, because otherwise Blender will try to render all of those particles. Even though it's not seen, it will really slow down your render times. So what you need to do is to, well, first of all, we need to subdivide our mesh multiple times, like that. So you've got a lot of, that's too many times, one back, okay. Many times like that, and then if you go into weight paint mode, you just need to paint in the area where all this stuff is visible to the camera. Like so, it looks like a heat map. And then you go to top view and it looks, you know, really weird. And then you can sort of like fill it in with like proper punches like that. And then you just want to, essentially what the red areas or any colored area that isn't blue is where the particles are going to appear. I'm doing this really quickly. I hope it's not too quick for you guys. I'm hoping that the key presses will help you out if you've missed something that I've done. But you know, again, I have to try and keep it quick because otherwise it's very boring to watch. So anyway, I've enabled group there. This is underneath the particle settings, vertex group. I click on group, and then all of those particles are now using that weight paint map that I've just finished painting, like so. So that means that, you know, if there's an area that you don't want there to be particles to appear, then you can just go here, use the strength of 0, and then just paint like a little blue area like that or something like that. And then in the particles, you can see you've now got these areas where there are no particles appearing. So that's how you do that. Okay, now there was something that I told you at the start. I'm going to be using some models from the Nature Academy, which is a little course that I run. It's just this right here. So what I'm going to do is just use some of these models that are included in the course in my scene. Now, I can't give them out to you because, you know, obviously it's part of the course, but they're pretty easy to create yourself if you wanted to go about doing that. Let's just click on this right here. You can see that they are pretty easy to create these little plants and grass strands and stuff like that yourself. Or if you're already a member of the course, you can go ahead and download those and throw them in your scene as well. But that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm going to be using those elements right there, and I'm going to use them exactly as I have just used the debris. So going here to the particle systems, I'm going to go ahead, load in that, and then underneath group, if I can find this, render, let's just change this to be plants. And I'll turn up the size of those so that they are properly scaled to fit the scene. Something like 0.3 should be good. And then I'll change the amount to be, let's go 600, like so. Randomized size, is everything good as well? And then for the grass as well, let's just make this down here. I'm going to use grass, bushy, and then I'm going to set that to 7,000. And then I also want to make sure that I use the vertex groups. And I want to do the same for this one here as well. Very easy to add in the nature. Let's set this to be 0.3, I think. Maybe about 0.5, 0.4 maybe. Yeah, 0.4, I think that looks quite nice. Lots of grass there now, and it looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead, bring back everything right now, and I'm going to give it a render with everything, and we'll see how it all looks. Hey, look at Sintel. Hey, 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 hey. What's going on? Let's fix you up. Sit down. There you go. That's weird. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's give that a render, and let's see how that looks. And there we go. It's looking pretty good. So the final step, or I suppose coming to the end of the tutorial, we're going to be creating some ivies to. For those of you who don't know what ivies are, it's a plant that grows up walls and things like that. I guess there's numerous terms for it, but that's what I call it, ivy. Anyway, well, we're going to be adding that in, and then we'll do a little bit of compositing just to finally finish it off. But let's do the ivies now. So it's a new feature that was introduced, I guess, in around about the last 6 months or so, which allows you to generate ivies from within Blender. So that's really cool, because previous to that you had to use like an external application, and it was kind of annoying. But now you can do it right from within Blender. So the way you do it is by going to File, User Preferences, and then in the add-ons category, this one right there, we go ahead and we type in Ivy, and then you should see something here called Ivy Gen. So go ahead and check that box, and then what that means now is if you go to if you hit Shift A, then underneath Curve, you should have something there that says Add Ivy to Mesh. Now, the way this works is it starts to grow an ivy based on where your 3D cursor is. So you need to place it somewhere where you want the ivy to start to grow from. So in this instance, I want it to start to grow just sort of in about, around about that area right there. So don't put it like too close up to the wall, or else it might put it on the other side of the wall. So just somewhere like that, and it'll sort of like get about, the right sort of place to start growing it. And then you go to Curve, Add Ivy to Mesh. And you can see that it has now grown that ivy right there. Now, you should keep in mind that it'll only do it on the object which is actually selected. So in this case, it's this one right there. Now, in order to change these settings for this, because you can see it looks pretty bland at the moment, you hit T, and you should now see what you can see right here, Ivy Gen. Now, this is where you're going to be able to get a little bit crazy and experiment with different settings. So once you've changed a setting, for example, that maximum length ivy, I just changed that to 5 meters instead of the default 1. You go ahead up to the top and you click on Update Ivy. And then once you've done that, you can see that it will now update that ivy and it will change it, just like so. So there's a number of different values here that you can play with. So I'm just going to let's just muck around here for a little bit. So I'm changing the ivy size. Okay, that's pretty cool. And let's also change the random weight, I think it is. Random weight. Let's turn that up to like, something like that. Let's try that. You want it to be a little bit crazy, So that's, I guess it's not too bad. Maybe it's a little bit too crazy. There we go. That's pretty good. I like that. I also want to increase the leaf size to make it kind of like double. So something like that. That's pretty cool. And then let's turn up the leaf probability. I don't know if that's going to make more or less. Yeah, that's going to make more. Okay, so let's make less leaves. I think there's probably too many leaves. Maybe still too many leaves. Turn that down. 0.2. Okay. I guess that's not too bad. I think I experimented with like a few of these other ones, like the current weight given to the current direction, which is like kind of like going up. So I think if you turn that down, then it's going to make it kind of like go wacky everywhere a little bit. Okay, so it's just going to sort of like climb less, I suppose. But I think I like it the way it was actually. It was kind of better. And you've got like the maximum float length, which is like how far it will go from the wall before it dies. Little stuff like that. But that's pretty cool. I like the way that is right there, so that's fine. So once you've done that, you can go ahead and shift it to a new location just by clicking that 3D cursor to be somewhere else, like that. And then up here, instead of clicking Update Ivy, you click on Add New Ivy. And now we'll add a new ivy based off all of those settings that you've currently got there. So it's actually a really cool way of adding ivies. So whoever put this script together really sort of thought about how to make it easier for people. And it's really cool. I really like the way it's been implemented. And it's It's one of those add-ons which I go, yeah, you know what? That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I like it. That's the height of my approval. Is I say I like it. I kind of like it. That's how I roll. Okay, so I've now had to select the back wall because, you know, as I said, it bases it off its selected object. So once I've done that, I then just go ahead and click on Add New Ivy again. And it's now crawled up that. You can see that it is actually crawling through the wall there, and it's not sort of like meshing up with that properly. If you wanted to, you could make both of those the same object, which is something I did for my final scene. But it's not that bad. It's pretty good the way it is. So I think it's fine. And then let's add another ivy right there. Okay, and then we'll add another one over here. So I have to change it to be this wall now, over here. Man, this is, whew, it's hard to keep track of what I'm clicking on right now. Okay. Alright, add new ivy. And then there should be another one, because you've got like a beam that's like right here. So I think I'll add like another one like right there. And, you know, you could, if you wanted to, like change it so that, you know, you just like snap the cursor to wherever you want it to go. But then this little panel here will just disappear. So I'm avoiding that, but it's annoying because I then have to, you can see that I misjudged this one. So it's kind of like grown off there. But if you make that mistake, instead of clicking add new, just click update ivy and it'll update that last ivy that you misplaced. Oh, it's in the wrong place anyway. That was annoying. Okay, let's move that again. Let's move it to here. Update ivy. Bam. Alright, that's pretty good. Okay, so you've now got the ivies in place, and it's looking very nice so far. So let's bring back the rest of the scene. Let's just make sure that everything is good as it should be. Yeah, it's not bad. Pretty good. Okay, now if you were to render this as it is, that would be very poor of you because, well, there's no materials in it. Okay, so you would just get like some white pieces of looking paper. Look like someone like went nuts with like sticky notes or whatever you want to call them, post-it notes. That's the word, and just stuck it like crazy everywhere. So we need to apply a specific material to it. I don't know why I'm selecting them all now. We need to just focus on one. So the good thing about this script, among other things, is that it's automatically UV unwrapped all those leaves for you. And I just so happen to have the perfect texture for it. Well, I'm kind of biased. It's actually my own texture. It's from the Nature Academy, again. But I'll provide it for you guys for free, so you guys can you can go ahead and download this specific texture. I should stop talking just so I can think about what I'm doing. Plants, ivy, something, ivy single. There we go. So this is the texture right here. You can see it's an alpha mask texture, and it perfectly works with. You can see like that's the top, like that's like the tip of the leaf, and that is the base of the leaf. So that's working quite well there. That's really cool. So that's that, and then for the material, what we need to do is let's just go ahead, give it a new material. Let's make it image ivy single. And this is something that's cool for plant matter. What you need to do in order to get it so that the light actually shines through a leaf, you need to combine with a diffuse shader. So a diffuse shader will just make it look like hard plastic with like no light shining through it. But if you combine it with a translucent shader, like that, and then you add an add shader, not a mix shader, an add shader. It took me a really long time to work out this specific shader setup because I was doing all sorts of crazy stuff to try and combine the two. But add shader is the way to do it. So that will make it so on the front it looks perfect like a diffuse shader, but then on the back it also gets light shining through it. So that's the way to do that. And then if you want, you can also make the leaves a little bit shiny as well. So in that case, you add a mix shader and you drop it in here. So you get the diffuse and the glossy shader, and you combine the two. So that's going to be like mostly diffuse and 0.1% of a glossy shader shining through as well. And got the add combined there as well. And so that should be fairly good. So if I just go, yeah, let's save that. And then, that's annoying. There we go. Let's have a look at how that looks. If it crashes, I'll be very upset. Nice. Okay. All right. Oh, yeah, right. Okay. So because it is an alpha masked image as well, what we need to do is over here, we need to combine it with a transparent shader, like here, and then add in a mix shader right here. Combine the two. Bada bing, bada boom. And then take the output from the alpha of our image. And you can see that it's around the wrong invert. So I just flip those around. And there we go. Now you have all the leaves exactly as they should appear. You could add some bump map to the leaf if you really wanted to, but it's not going to make much of a difference at all. I might turn down the glossiness though. Or actually maybe I might just turn up the sharpness of it. Or should I? Yeah. No. Like that. Yeah, less of the shading. Yeah, anyway, I'm talking to myself here. Sorry about that. I do that sometimes. This is Ivy Leaf. And we're going to give it a green color so that we can actually see it apart. And then for the Ivy branch, yeah, really simple. The most basic of basic materials. Nice brown color. There we go. Nice. All right. So now we need to just apply those materials to everything in the scene. So I'm just selecting the leaves right now, one by one. One by one. And then I select that leaf last. Then I hit Control L and then materials. And you can see that material has now applied to everything else. And very quickly, just do the same with the branches. Oh, not you. Always trying to get in there, isn't he? Very sneaky. All right. Control L, materials. Excellent. So, that should be it. Everything should be ready to go now. That is the final element. We're going to do a little bit of compositing coming up next. But I'm going to go ahead and give this sort of like a final render just to see, see it all together. One thing I'm going to include is these sandbags. Now, these sandbags aren't really applicable to the ruined or grunge type environment, but I added it to try and like tell a story. Like, to be honest, I wasn't entirely sure of the story, so I kind of went with like a zombie kind of theme. Like, I thought like, oh, maybe there's like zombie, like, like in the movie I Am Legend, where kind of like he's the last man on Earth, but everybody else is still there, but they're crazy. So Sintel is kind of like mellowed out. She's like depressed because there's like everybody else, but they're all zombies. So she set up like these sandbags to kind of like fight them off. But then maybe she got like angry one morning and she was just like, raw, and she'd kick through the sandbags. She's like, I don't care about anybody. I'm going to kill all you. And then she kind of regrets it. And so she's like just chilling out, whatever. But the sandbags, I'm not going to show you how to make. That was the point of all that, because it's not really exclusive to the ruined theme. But I'll zoom in. You can see it's a very basic mesh, and it's been sort of like UV unwrapped and stuff, and you get the picture. It's so I'm going to go ahead and include it in the render, and then let's have a look at how it looks when it is finished. Okay, so the render looks pretty good. We're going to make it better though. We're going to go to the compositor now, and we're going to add some fog. Because no abandoned warehouse would be complete without some like dank, like musty, fog wafting through the air. So that's what we're going to do. Let's go to the compositor. I've got something here already. I got like some lights set up or something. Let's just have a look. Okay. So that's like from the lamp in the background there. I can increase that a little bit. I just set up like a render layer for that little lamp in the background there, just so that it's shining. It looks a little bit more. Well, it looks a bit better than having nothing there. But anyway, that's not part of this. That's just something else I did on the side. So to add a fog effect, what you need to do is go ahead and add in a map value node. Now I'm hoping I can find it. If I can't find it. There we go, map value node. Okay, so what we do is we take the output from the Z depth, so that is the it like calculates the distance, how far away things are from the camera. If you hit Control Shift and then click on that map value node, it'll give you a readout of that node, it'll connect the viewer to that node. And the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and turn down the size to be like 0.02. I guess that kind of works. Or 0.01 0.01, I think that's kind of better. All right, and then I'm going to check use minimum and use maximum, and I'm also going to turn down the offset. Now the offset is going to allow you, or like there to be like a certain period like in front of the camera where there's like no, you know, smog or smoke or whatever, you know, so something like that. That looks pretty cool. And then essentially what you do there is you just take, you just add in a mix node. You drop this in. Ooh, what happened there? Ooh, there we go. And then I take the output from, you know, the whole scene that we've got going there. Then I change this to be add, like so. And you can see it's now added in, but it's really, really thick at the moment. Well, actually, that's taking the output just from the map value node. What you need to actually do is to put it into the factor input node. I'm playing it up like I meant to do this. I didn't. So it's supposed to go into the factor input. I don't know why it's called fac. That's like the stupidest name to say. I hate saying it. Fac. Put it into the fac input. Sorry about that. And then once you've done that, you can then, because it's set to add, which only takes like the light values, you can then just like tone this down. And that'll like affect how much fog actually shows through. So if you go too hard, people are going to say, oh, that looks weird, that looks really, you know, stupid. Don't do that. So just be subtle with it. Like if you find an effect that looks cool, like apply it and then like walk away from the scene, do something else for a little bit, you know, procrastinate, which I'm sure a lot of you are quite familiar with. I know I am. You know, do something else, go on Facebook, whatever, and then come back to it and then you know, see if it looks weird to you. That's my motto anyway. That's like what I tell myself when I'm on Facebook or something, or like Reddit. I'm like, no, I'm just buying time so that when I come back, I can, you know, approach it with a fresh outlook, as opposed to I'm just wasting away my life, you know. But that's it. That concludes the tutorial, guys. As you can see, it really does look like a worn down scene now, as in comparison to what we had at the start. If I'll bring it up, if I can find it. Did I even save it? Oh, I did. There we go. Hang on. I'm just on the other screen over here. There we go. That's what it looked like. That's what we got at the start. And then this is what we have right now. So, yeah. That's it, guys. I hope you learnt a whole bunch of stuff from this. And I really designed this tutorial that it could be used for like multiple different things, which is why I started with a starter scene and then we, you know, worked our way through it and created something different, so that you could take the principles of like adding grunge and debris and breaking stuff and apply it to all sorts of things. You don't have to just go with like the warehouse idea. You can sort of run with it and do whatever you want. So hope you enjoyed it, guys. If you did enjoy it, please go ahead, leave me a comment. If you create something cool, go ahead and leave that in the comments as well, because I love seeing that as well, like seeing the works that you guys create from the tutorial. So go ahead and do that. And that finishes off the tutorial. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.